Skylar Callahan on the line from Dub V Nation. Skylar, how you doing tonight?
Mark, doing great. Thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Hope everything's been going well. I think the last time we caught up with you was right around National Signing Day.
Mm-hmm.
The basketball season has not gone well, from what I understand, there at West Virginia, near the bottom of the Big 12.
A little bit of a down year for basketball, so everything's all kind of shifted to spring football, which is never a bad thing in my mind.
It's never a bad thing for me. That's better for business for me. Let's talk football. Neal Brown's in place. He's 38 years old. He's had a nice run at Troy. He's one of the few coaches in college football on the FBS level that has won at least 10 games, 3 consecutive seasons. And his team has been able to compete with the likes of LSU with a famous upset 2 years ago. So once Dana Holgorsen stepped down and Neal Brown became the target and was signed, what was your reaction?
Honestly, I had to do some digging because, I mean, there's the few days prior to him actually getting the job, we obviously heard the rumors about West Virginia and Neal Brown contacting each other and having the interviews in place. But really, I had to do my own digging. I mean, I remember the game against LSU. They went down and beat them, but never would I have ever thought that was going to be the next head coach of West Virginia. So had to do some digging. I was kind of intrigued by him. And, you know, I think he's going to fit really well in Morgantown. I mean, he's a culture changer. And just the atmosphere and the energy that he's created in Morgantown in just a short 2-3 month span is just unreal. It has been a complete 180 from the Holgorsen era.
Now, Skylar, what do we know about Neal Brown's approach? His approach to offensive and defensive football? What has he done in the past? Is he married to that? Is he going to look over the personnel and the roster and try to mold his system? What has he done in the past? What's been his calling card?
Well, offensively, it's very similar to kind of what Dana Holgorsen did when he was calling the plays. You know, it's a spread look, but they're going to have the focus on running the football. And the last 3 seasons that he was at Troy, he had at least one rusher go over 1,000 yards. So the emphasis is there to run the ball, but they like to get the ball to their playmakers in the slot, and they'll take their shots deep down the field. Very similar offense. There's not going to be much to learn, I guess, for the offensive guys as there is for the defense, which is going to be a complete change. As Tony Gibson ran that 3-3-5 defense, now Vic Koenig comes in. He's going to run almost a 3-4, maybe even a 4-3 at times. He's got a multiple defensive look. So Koenig's not really married to a certain system, but they're going to have a major change on the defensive side of the ball. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these guys take to their new positions. There's some guys that have played safety their whole life. They're now going to play linebackers. Some linebackers have moved down to defensive ends. So it's going to be a whole new look on the defenses.
Of course, you're losing one of the marquee quarterbacks in program history in Will Grier. Before the emergence of Kyler Murray, it was pretty much a slam dunk in naming the best quarterback for every conference and moving to the Big 12, saying it's Will Grier. Nobody else is even close going into 2018, and he didn't disappoint. I got to think that in some regards, the season was a bit of a disappointment. I know that we talked about it preseason and looked at the stretched run, and to consider that you had Oklahoma at home, you gave up 2 defensive touchdowns and still put up 56 points in that game and some ridiculous amount of yardage that almost hit quadruple digits, like 740 or something crazy in that game. To step away from that and not quite get it done and get to the Big 12 championship game had to be a major disappointment.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's kind of the reason that Holgorsen moved on, and now Neal Brown is in his place and taking over his office, because heading into this 2018 season, we've been talking for the last 2 or 3 years that this was going to be the year. If we're going to contend for the Big 12 championship, this is the year we're going to do it, with a veteran quarterback, a veteran defense, and some playmakers on the outside. And when you get to that stretch run of the Oklahoma State game and even the Iowa State game early in the season, and obviously the Oklahoma game at the end of the year, it's just this team had a consistency of not being able to finish under Holgorsen. And at the end of the day, they were 1 game away, really 3 points away from the Big 12 championship. But that's not enough for West Virginia fans. I mean, they're thinking not only Big 12 championship, they're thinking New Year's Six and maybe even more. And ever since Rich Rodriguez has left, the program has kind of taken a little bit of a decline. And they want to get back to that golden era of West Virginia football where we're contending for, conference championships and BCS bowls or New Year's Six games now, and maybe even a national championship again. So I just think that with Holgorsen, the writing was on the wall, and he was never going to get extended. That he wanted the extension at West Virginia. Lions said no, and I applaud Shane Lyon for doing that because a lot of ADs would have just kind of been stuck in that situation, would have thrown the money at him, kind of like Auburn did with Gene Chizik, and you see how that's worked out. Or Gus Malzahn, and he didn't do that. He wanted to go in a different direction and try and start re-energize his program.
Then when you play that kind of season and you've got a conference championship within your grasp and you haven't won one since you joined the league and hadn't won one since going back, of course, to the Big East days and let that slip away again, it's difficult. And then you go to a bowl game and you were really down for the count. No quarterback, 2 of your 3 best wide receivers are out. Your left tackle had declared for the NFL draft. And so it's still a game with 10 minutes left. You don't win the bowl game. Did you really... were you just thinking, okay, well, it is what it is, and we didn't really have our best team here? Or was it disappointing because that's your national stage to cap off a season and get as high a ranking as you possibly could get, and instead you finish with a 4th loss?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both, honestly. And I think when the game was happening, the majority of the fan base was, oh, another disappointment. It's another loss. We just lost to Syracuse. And for those folks who are not familiar with West Virginia or the old Big East, West Virginia-Syracuse is a big-time rivalry back in the day. So this is nothing to sneeze at and just, we just lost to Syracuse in a bowl game. We'll be back next year. This upset fans because we're used to beating Syracuse, especially in the last 10, 15 years. We've really dominated that series. And when you go lose to Syracuse, who's lost a lot of luster to their brand name, it's kind of disappointing. And especially with the year that it's been, you're in the top. I think we were ranked number 6 in the country at one point, and you're looking at the college football playoff, and then all of a sudden you're in a bowl game with Syracuse. That's not the game that you want to be in. But also you got to think about it too. With the players that were out, you got to give credit to how they played for about 3 quarters. They played really tough. They did what they could. Jack Allison really struggled in that game at quarterback, but you only had a couple of weeks to prepare. I know they say you get about 14 bowl practices, but they only used about 8. So it is what it is, but you got to be able to take what they learned from that game and put it towards this year. Don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be, but you got to at least like that Jack Allison had his chance to step in and get some experience.
Get to Skylar Callahan on the line from W Nation, talking West Virginia football, coming off 8-4 in 2018, but with a completely different look when you talk about franchise quarterback and, of course, head coach being the star of just about any program in college football, with Dana Holgorsen moving on to Houston and Will Grier that we just saw at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Spring practice opens on March 19th, so we're just about a week away, and the spring game there in Morgantown on April 13th. So what's going to make you feel better about this football team once you see them on the field on April 13th and hearing reports out of spring camp? What are you looking to see?
Definitely. I think the one thing is on the defensive side of the ball, we've had some pretty decent defenses over the years, especially under Tony Gibson. But the one thing I really want to see defensively is these guys really attacking, and missed tackles has been really the biggest problem in the last 2 to 3 years. I think one game we had 30 missed tackles. I think that was the Iowa State game. We had 30 or 40 missed tackles in one game, and that's unheard of. You should never have that kind of a situation. So I really want to see how Vic Koenig puts his defense together, where some of these guys are going to line up. Like I said, some of these guys have played different positions before, and they're going to be asked to move to a new spot. So how do they get accustomed to that role, and how easy of a transition is that? And, I want to see some of these guys be headhunters. Don't be afraid to come in and make a play. There's a lot of hesitation sometimes in the past. But offensively, I just want to see the quarterback situation. I think it's going to be Austin Kendall, the Oklahoma transfer. But I love to see these 2 guys battle it out. He had to go out there and get another quarterback because there's only 2 on scholarship with Jack Allison and Trey Lowe. Now you got a 3rd guy in there. I think that creates a lot of competition. I wouldn't necessarily give it to Kendall just yet, but I think he's got to be the front runner, and I'd love to see him out there running around because he has sat behind 2 Heisman quarterbacks now.
Did Neal Brown say anything, whether that was his introductory press conference or anything since, that would make you believe that he's taking this program, even though he's got a similar offense in place, that he's going to be a different kind of coach than Dana Hogerson, and there's going to be a marked difference in the way the program's run?
Oh yeah, certainly. It's almost a culture shock when you step in the building. I mean, it's a completely different atmosphere. And, there's a new rule now where if you're in the football facility, you cannot be caught in, flip flops or practice shorts or anything. You have to be basically in almost a golf etiquette kind of thing. You have to wear slacks or khakis or polo shirt, button up shirt, something dressy, because he said, you never know who's going to show up. The AD, the president, we got to look nice. We got to be here for business. There's time for fun as well, but we're here to get stuff done. So, he's just really by the book, and he's almost a perfectionist. He's going to say things aren't as good as they are, but there's a lot better in the normal eye. But I just think that really the atmosphere is the biggest change that I've seen, and it started from day one. He's going to, and it's really about almost a family atmosphere too. Dana Holgorsen really never established that, and I think that's what kind of created some turmoil amongst him and maybe even some of the assistant coaches and the players. Now you've got that with Neal Brown. He's bringing everyone together. He's doing stuff for the community. It's almost, I've said it a couple of times on some other shows, that Neal Brown is almost like a diet Dabo Swinney that no one knows about.
I like that. Did you come up with that yourself?
Yes, I did.
All right. You're gonna have to make sure everybody knows that. I like that. Because when you think family, you think comfort, you think casual, but then I guess this is the family that dresses well to dinner.
Right.
They make sure that they've got their Sunday best on. As one high school football coach, a prominent coach in Mississippi, once told me, there are two things in the South that you dress up for, and that's Sunday church and Friday football.
That's right.
It's like 102 degrees out, and the coach had his jacket and tie on, and somebody had made a comment to it. Maybe it was me, and that was his response. And I just thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah. And really another thing that we've noticed in the last couple of weeks is how much the players really follow their position coaches. I mean, this is something that, it was always there, but it was the love between the player and coach was never as strong as it is right now. I mean, we see all the assistant coaches, they go out and they've been taking their position groups to dinner every week, and they'll post a picture of it. I mean, this is just awesome. And the coaching staff is also much more into the recruiting than the previous staff, where anytime they get a commitment, they're tweeting about it. They're excited. They're sharing their excitement. I think that's really what's bringing this fan base together. And honestly, I don't know if I've seen the fan base all on the same page since Rich Rodriguez left. Ever since that, it's been almost split down the middle, and I think they're finally bringing everyone together.
All right, talking some West Virginia football, Skylar Callahan from W Nation. Please join him right there. When folks check out your content offerings there on Twitter, what's the whole package of podcasts and writing and everything else involved?
Well, you can follow the main account, which is at W Nation. You can follow me at DVN Callahan. If you want to follow anything recruiting wise, that's DVN Recruiting. And our talk show is obviously Between the Ears, and you can find that on SoundCloud or any streaming device. We're also on the air on WBES 950 AM Charleston, the Sports Fox. And we've also, I want to pump this real quick as well. We actually did a documentary back in the fall on former West Virginia running back Eugene Napoleon, and we're actually going to be having the opening premiere for that documentary next Saturday in Morgantown. So make sure you show up at Kegler's Sports Bar at 6 p.m. It's going to be a blast.
So you produced a documentary on this young man, so there must be a story to tell. Yes. And it's going to be premiered at like a sports pub.
Yeah. Me and Eugene have been really good friends for the past couple of years. And he was a part of that 1988 undefeated national championship team, or that made it to the national championship. Played with the great Major Harris under Don Neal, who's both of those guys are going to be in attendance. So it's going to be a long week ahead trying to plan for this, but it's going to be really fun. Great atmosphere. We came together probably about a year ago on this idea and said, you know what, West Virginia has never done anything like this. There's movies and shows and stuff all out there about other colleges and their players. And I was like, let's be the first ones to do this. So we're almost doing our little ESPN 30 for 30 on WVU players.
That is fascinating. Quite the undertaking. Skylar, I appreciate you stopping by. It's always a good discussion on West Virginia football. Hopefully some folks that love the Mountaineers can see this. We don't have a legion of West Virginia fans here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, but hopefully with your help, we can change that and bring some of these Mountaineer fans on board.
Absolutely. They're missing out. I appreciate you as always, Mark.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You have a great night.
You do the same.